You ever wake up thinking your biggest worry will be whether to add a coat of red paint to your old barn, and by sundown, you're knee-deep in a showdown straight out of a legal drama? Because that's how I learned never to underestimate a neighbor who thinks HOA rules are a license to run a fiefdom. No joke, by the end of that week, I watched a woman turn herself into a viral cautionary tale, and all I had to do was document the wreckage. It started like this: sunrise turning the Texas fields gold, me with a mug of coffee on my porch, feeling retired in all the right ways. Then I hear it, something like a diesel engine in cardiac arrest meets Niagara Falls. When I step outside, there's Margaret, our HOA president, suited up like she's about to cut a ribbon at the city's fanciest groundbreaking. Only, instead of ribbon, she's managed to puncture the main county water line. 30 feet of Texas aquifer shooting sky high, turning my yard into a mud spa and her into the most expensive performance artist in the county. I can't even describe the look: mascara streaming, blazer splattered, her pride sinking faster than my fence post. The woman had set out to dig a spite well for her HOA empire and accidentally baptized herself with $2.3 million worth of waterworks. I stood there, half in shock, half in awe, thinking, there's your lesson on property compliance, Margaret. You ever tangled with an HOA Karen like that? If you have, you're in the right place. I'm Jake Thompson. A year ago, I figured my life's drama was over. Left the city, bought up my granddad's 47 acres, and settled into a farmhouse that creaks in all the right places. I'd done my time debugging other people's disasters. I wanted peace and photogenic cows, not headaches and lawsuits. For 93 days, it was paradise. Then Margaret and her Willow Creek estates mushroomed up along my fence. McMansions and a shiny new HOA with rules about mailbox fonts and acceptable shades of beige. Margaret didn't just join. She crowned herself queen, launching a campaign to manage the neighborhood, starting with my side of the fence. She made her entrance sharp as glass, knocked on my door, power suit so crisp it hurt to look at, and introduced herself as President Whitmore. She had a leather binder the size of a phone book and a smile that could frost a desert. First words out of her mouth: "Your fence is 6 inches too close to our boundary." Then she pointed at my F-150 like I'd parked a tank in her garden. I explained as gently as you do when someone doesn't understand recursion, that the fence had been there since '87 and the truck. While I was standing on my own land, wasn't I? She sniffed, looked at her clipboard like she was unlocking nuclear codes, and told me she'd be in touch. That kicked off 3 months of administrative warfare. I started collecting complaints like merit badges. My barn, built by my granddad, now an unauthorized structure. My truck, abandoned while I was out buying groceries. She even convinced the post office my mailbox was an existential threat. Hours spent at the county office became my new normal, swapping stories with staff who knew me by name. Jake, Margaret complained again? Margaret's big play was the water rights stunt. Hired a surveyor, paid for with the HOA's money, to dredge up a 1952 deed discrepancy. Nothing real, just enough to gum up the legal works. The move? Force an easement fight. Game over for most people. But see, I've spent decades untangling systems that want to eat you alive. Sometimes the best fix is letting the system blow up spectacularly, then collecting the pieces. So, when I heard those diesel engines outside at dawn, saw Margaret marshaling a pair of surveyors on my property, dressed like she was headed to a board meeting, I knew it was showtime. She called it an HOA boundary verification. I called it trespassing. I pulled out my phone and started recording. That little move? Game changer. In Texas, you need written notice for property surveys. She had nothing but attitude. The lead surveyor went pale. Margaret turned the color of my barn, muttered something about obstructionism, and packed up with a glare that could melt steel. As she stormed off, I realized she was so used to steamrolling people, she didn't even see me coming. Her next act was a county inspector at my door. looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Violation, he said. Multiple complaints, unauthorized livestock, improper waste disposal, running an unlicensed repair shop. I wiped my hands, showed him around, and by the end he was sweating through his shirt, apologizing for wasting my time. Might want to file a counter-complaint, sir. Margaret was documenting her own meltdown, and I was just gathering evidence. Then came the neighborhood newsletter, Margaret painting me as a threat to children, groundwater, and everything pure. Professionally staged photos, claims of environmental harm, a call to action for a community safety meeting. I barely finished my coffee before the county health department called. Formal complaint about illegal septic systems, soil contamination. Margaret had escalated from annoying to nuclear, betting I'd fold under pressure. What she didn't count on. Programmers don't panic. We log everything. I told the inspector to bring every document, check every sample. By nightfall, I was up to my elbows in property records and HOA filings. Turns out, Margaret wasn't just a power-hungry president. She was running a real estate scam. Her husband's survey company was finding discrepancies all over. Her law school buddy was cashing in on legal fees, and the land they pried loose was getting flipped for profit by her brother-in-law's development firm. You want the punchline? Margaret's own evidence put her at the scene, on my property, time-stamped by security cams, planting those soil samples herself. She'd written her own confession. I organized it all into a digital package. Years of forged complaints, trespassing, fraud, every dirty trick. Sent it to the right people. County investigators, the FBI, a local reporter hungry for a corruption story. Margaret didn't go quietly. She left legal threats taped to my door, called in fake police reports about violence and weapons, tried to drum up signatures door to door with forged documents. Every step, she left a paper trail. Every call, every threat, every forged petition, I logged it, photographed it, backed it up in triplicate. When the night of her community safety meeting came, the clubhouse was packed. Margaret at the podium, charts and PowerPoints, and her brother-in-law ready to swoop in and remediate my land. I waited until the climax, her calling for a community vote to take my property, before I stood up, plugged in my laptop, and showed everyone exactly what she'd been up to. Fraud, evidence tampering, organized theft, her entire operation, lit up on the projector. Agent Rodriguez, FBI badge flashing, stood up. Margaret Whitmore, Kevin Morrison, you're under arrest. The click of handcuffs? Sweetest sound in the world. Margaret's final words, caught on camera. This isn't over. But I already knew. I'd rebuilt the system, debugged the neighborhood, handed out the justice she'd cooked up for herself. 6 months later, I'm still on my porch, same mug of coffee, sun coming up over the hill country. Margaret's in a federal facility. Her accomplices cut deals, the HOA reformed from the ground up. New bylaws, real oversight, lost land returned to rightful owners. Even the newsletter now runs stories about actual neighborhood events, not hit pieces. The real win? We turned her fraud into scholarships for local kids, rebuilt the water line she nearly wrecked, and hold meetings to plan block parties, not criminal conspiracies. Funny how the taste of morning dew, freedom, and karma blend so well once you've cleared out the rot. If you ever face your own Margaret, document everything, stand your ground, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Bullies count on you staying silent. They never expect you to fight smarter. So, tell me, have you faced an HOA nightmare or stood up to a neighbor who pushed too far? Drop your story below. Let's see if anyone can top Margaret. And if this tale gave you a little courage or a laugh, share it with someone who needs it. Because the best justice is the kind everyone gets to watch.